All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our weekly town hall for the Kentucky Electronic Visit Verification Project, along with Therap. My name is Jason Laws from Therap, and I am excited to be with you guys again and appreciate you taking a little time out of your afternoon to join us. As I think all of you know by now, we've been having these weekly town hall sessions for several weeks, really with the intent of keeping you guys up to date in terms of what's going on with the Kentucky EVV project. As well as the opportunity to share questions that you have, experiences that you had, that sort of thing, and make sure that we're all on the same page as we continue to move forward. You know, the go live date is not too far away, and so I know we're pretty deep into the onboarding process with many of you, and we've enjoyed our time working with you, and look forward to kind of getting into the home stretch with getting everybody up and running with EVV here in the state of Kentucky on the home health side. So with that, let's go ahead and officially kick things off. Again, welcome to everyone and appreciate you guys being with us. As always, our little webinar tips and tricks. Obviously, if you're seeing me and hearing my voice, then you know how to get into a webinar. But in the event that you were to lose signal and need to join by telephone, we do have a phone number and meeting ID available, as you should be able to see on your screen in case you need to dial in for whatever reason. Also, if you're having issues with hearing anyone or anything of that nature and you need a little help troubleshooting your technology, please feel free to use the chat icon within your Zoom platform. We've got a lot of folks on our side keeping an eye on that, making sure that we can help you figure out maybe if there's any speaker issues or what have you, so that you can hear what you need to hear. So please use that. And then another big part of what we're hoping that you guys will do with us today is to engage with the content that's getting shared. We definitely want to make sure that on top of the content we're sharing with you, we also want to hear from you in terms of questions that you have. I know many of you have already submitted several questions in past town halls, and we've tried to get the answers back out to you. Now that you've spent a little more time through the onboarding process with some of our specialists, new questions may have arisen, and we certainly want you to feel free to share those through Zoom, because as I always say, if you're thinking that question, I guarantee 5 other people at least are thinking it too. So please don't hesitate to share, and we'll try to get answers to you. As I think everyone knows, we try to get answers during the session, but in the event we're not able to get to all of them, we will certainly compile all of the questions and answers and get them up on our website. I'll show you where you can find that resource as we go through the presentation. So that being said, let's get to some formal introductions. As I said, my name is Jason Laws with Therap Services. I am one of the project leads here on our Kentucky EVV project, and I'm glad, again, as I said, to be with you. And as has been the case over the course of the last couple of weeks, I'm bringing some friends with me today, so you guys don't have to hear my voice for an hour and a half. You got some new folks that I'm excited for you all to be able to spend a little bit of time with during our town hall today. First of all, we've got joining us our Assistant Director of Support for the state team, Stephanie Masters-Norton, who has been one of our longtime specialists with EVV. We're excited to have her back, and she's going to be sharing some information on the EVV platform itself, how to utilize it through scheduling administration and checking in, checking out, a lot of the day-to-day functionality that you and many of your staff are going to be using relative to EVV. We're also pleased to have Shawnette Lancaster, another one of our senior specialists here at Therap, who is going to be kind of building off of what Stephanie's covering with you guys. Shawnette's going to show you some of the more advanced tricks within EVV in terms of some of the reporting capabilities that you have, some of the dashboards you're going to have available within your platform. Really, the overall intent of today's session is a focus on just utilization of the platform. You know, we focused a lot on setup, necessarily so, over the course of the last several weeks, and we're continuing to work with you guys one-on-one to do that. But we're really going to focus our session today on actually using the platform and what it can do, and how you and your staff are going to be setting up schedules, checking in, checking out, and then monitoring the services they're being provided. So that's really our outline for the rest of the time that we have together. I'm going to do my typical spiel here at the beginning, just for some quick project timelines and updates and a review of the onboarding process, but I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet because I want you to hear from these ladies. That's really the bulk of what we want to cover, so I'm going to try to get to that demonstration piece really quickly, and then we'll close out, as we always do, with a review of the questions that are coming in and some of the past questions that we received, to make sure you guys are getting the information that you need, and we'll then kind of set the stage for the town halls to come in following weeks. So that's our plan. And so with that, let me quickly again run through kind of the project overview and description that hopefully you guys have heard many times and have now committed to memory. But essentially, as I think everyone knows, we at Therap Services are the selected vendor for EVV for both home health and personal care services in the state of Kentucky. And that means a couple of things. Number one, it means we're providing an EVV platform that we are onboarding many of you guys to. It also means that we provide a Therap aggregator, which is essentially a repository for EVV data. So whether you're using Therap's EVV system or you're choosing the option to use your own EVV platform through your own EMR, that data is going to come together within the EVV aggregator, and that is the data that's going to be used to ultimately validate claims. And we're going to be walking you through the entire process of getting that all set up. Again, as always, a reminder that the EVV for our home health services is going to be going live on 12/28. Again, the official required date is 1/1/24, but we're going to have everything in place a couple of days early, and so that's why we're using this date here, because you guys will have it all available to you and begin to start on that date, should you choose to do so. So here's kind of the timeline overall. We've kind of made it a good chunk of the way through our little winding road here. You know, we kicked things off, obviously, with our work with the state earlier over the summer. And then in late September, we did our first town hall and have ever since then been working on provider onboarding and training with all of you guys out in the field. And that's still very much where we are. We're making a lot of good progress there and excited to get that moving. We're going to continue to do that throughout the remainder of November and into early December with final testing and training and getting everybody prepped for that 12/28/23 go live date. In terms of the options, again, I know I repeat this every week, but I always want to make sure folks have a good understanding of the options you have available to you. There are essentially two separate options. One is utilizing the state system for EVV data collection. That is the Therap EVV platform that is provided to you at no cost by the state of Kentucky, whereby you are able to collect all of your EVV data and then send it over to the Therap aggregator. You also, within that option, have the ability to do direct billing to your MCOs as well as your MMIS system should you choose to use it. So all of that is kind of the primary state system option. The other option, as I mentioned prior, is the third-party vendor option, meaning if you have your own EHR that provides an EVV option, you are certainly welcome to use it with a couple of caveats. Obviously, we've got to make sure that it meets certification and can exchange data with the Therap aggregator. I know many of you have indicated your intent to utilize a third-party system, and I know we've worked with you to get the necessary agreements in place, get you the specs for the API and the aggregator, and certainly we'll continue to work with you guys to do that. Obviously, keeping in mind, should you choose to utilize a third party, that is owned and paid for by the provider. That would be a direct contract relationship you have with your alternate vendor. So again, those are the two options that are available to folks. And in terms of the activities we participate in with you guys, again, we've gone through really all of these in some form or fashion, I think, with each of you by this point. But as a reminder, we're doing these town halls to keep everybody on the same page, getting the necessary information, providing opportunity for Q&A and the like. And we will certainly continue to do that throughout the life of the project. The onboarding activities here in the middle are going to be those one-on-one sessions that you're doing with our specialists on the Therap side. Really focus largely on setup. When we're talking about onboarding, it's about getting your account set up and basically getting all the individuals and users and roles and privileges and authorizations and all that fun stuff set up inside of the system so that you'll be prepared to do the actual data collection that goes along with EVV. And that's really kind of where the training comes in, where we move past the setup piece into the how do we actually use this thing piece. And that's the training which we do in a lot of ways, one of which is what we're going to be doing today. It's kind of showing you guys how that process works. We have a lot of materials also available to you, additional resources in terms of recorded live webinars, other types of asynchronous materials. We've got a dedicated support page that I'll show you again a bit later in the presentation, all with the intent of you guys being able to get the information that you need to be able to conduct EVV services in the way that works best for your organization in terms of accessing those resources. In terms of the onboarding process, not going to spend a lot of time here because I think almost all of you have certainly initiated this, or certainly we hope so by this point. But for anybody that has not, the way we initiate this is through an initial submission of a job form that you see on your screen, where you're indicating what category of user you are and then filling out this form that will message us so that we can get you guys set up in the system and follow up with you to get your initial session set up with one of our specialists. And so we definitely encourage you all to do that. And again, most of you already have. In the event, though, that for whatever reason, any of you have not yet submitted that job form and gotten a schedule or gotten a session on the schedule with one of our specialists, please do so immediately so we can get this process going. We're getting pretty deep into the calendar here and want to make sure we have time to get you guys set up and ready for that go live date at the end of the year. So if you've not heard from us or not had an opportunity to submit that, please do so. Please reach out to us at the email alias that you see on your screen, kysupport@therapservices.net. You can certainly also reach out to the state at the Medicaid public comment address that you see. And we ask when you do those submissions to please provide your name, contact info, as well as the name of your agency and provider number. That'll help us be a little more efficient in terms of reaching out to you and getting things addressed. In terms of the onboarding itself, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because we want to focus more on the training piece of EVV today, but the quick high-level overview reminder, again, is that these calls that you're setting up with us initially are going to be focused on the setting up of the account, your admins and logins, your programs and sites, which are your services and locations provided, and getting individuals and users and privileging in there. Again, really kind of building the infrastructure of your organization within the Thera platform, whereby we'll then work with you on follow-up calls on configuring your account to your particular needs in terms of the services that you're providing, and really teaching you guys how to utilize the schedule administration and setup for all of your staff. Again, if you choose to, you do have available to you within Thera a direct claims submission option so that you can submit claims directly from your EVV data to the MMIS and MCOs, respectively, that you guys work with. I will go ahead and put a plug in for next week. We will be focusing very much on that billing piece in next week's town hall. So if that's something you're interested in doing, please join us for that. We're going to talk a lot about that there with our billing specialist, Kelly Galloway. If you're doing the third-party route, then we have a slightly different process, or not slightly, a significantly different process, I should say, since you're not going to be using Therap's EVV platform. There's not nearly as much setup on that side. You're using your private EHR for that piece, but we do have some agreements that we need you to sign. Once we get that information, we can also share with you the specs for the API to share data with the aggregator, and then we have a technical lead that will help walk you through the process. And again, I know many of you have already initiated this, but for any others that are interested in that, please reach out to us as soon as you possibly can to help initiate that process. So all of that being said, is to kind of remind everyone, hopefully of stuff that you already knew and are kind of already working on. But at this point, I want to turn it over to my teammates, Stephanie and Shawnette, to get into a demonstration of the actual Thera EVV platform. They're going to take the next little while to really go over kind of that whole piece of how do we schedule slots, how do folks check in and out, what can I do as a schedule administrator around editing slots, and really all of the administration that goes into kind of overseeing your EVV services. So with that, I believe I'm heading it over to Stephanie first. Is that correct, guys?
Yep, that's right. And I'm going to take over the screen.
There you go.
I'm excited to be here with you all. I had been away from work for a bit and I'm returning just in time to get involved here. I've been the lead for training and implementation for EVV in several other states. And I think what you have done already has you on a good trajectory to be able to go live by 12/28. So if you're feeling anxious about that, get in touch with us. We're happy to help you. There's plenty of time to get you ready to go. So where I'm going to start is looking at your methods of check-in. I'm using what's called a mobile simulator. So this is a great training tool, and we can drop the link in the chat for you. I'm going to show you first the fastest way to collect EVV data, which is called a self check-in. This doesn't require any pre-scheduling or pre-planning on your part. It's something that you would configure for your users, and then they would be responsible for collecting that check-in and check-out when they're in the field doing the work. There doesn't have to be a schedule in place in advance for this. So with this training tool, you can choose which operating system you're using. And then it's giving us a demo of what the screen will look like on your mobile app. So whether you're using a tablet or a smartphone, you would see this on your screen. You would log in with that same information that you use on the computer, and you're going to click on that scheduling EVV section. There's nothing here planned for us. So what we're going to use is the self check-in button down here at the bottom. And you'll see the screen where you're asked to choose who you're providing supports to. So this is going to be the people on your caseload. If you have a lot of people, you can search for a specific person. So I'm going to click on Elizabeth. It's going to have me choose the program, which you may just have one program in your account, and then the service. So this would be that private duty nursing or speech therapy or whatever the service is that you're providing. You're only going to see the services that that individual is authorized for, and you're only going to see the services that are assigned to you as a user. So if you're not a nurse, you won't see that nursing code. So we've chosen the individual, the program, and the service. It's already collecting my name and title because I'm signed in. And when I click next, it's going to pull my location. So this is using the GPS device in your tablet or smartphone. This is not always 100% accurate. So if it is inaccurate, you can always use the comment box to explain. Just know that GPS is not 100% accurate. You may notice this as you're pulling up these addresses and geolocating them in your TheraP system, that the pin is not always dropped exactly on the spot. And it's more about proximity to show how close are you to that individual's residence where they're getting the service. So when I click submit, it's going to collect the time and that geolocation. And now I'll see that schedule appear here on my screen because I have checked in for it. So I would go about my service delivery, and then when I'm ready to end this service, log back into TheraP, I would go back to my scheduling EVV section and I would see the visit here where I've already checked in. So I'm going to click on that and see an option to check out. So a little faster here because all you're getting is your time and your location. And then when I go back to my agenda, I can see I have this green line here that's showing me that is a completed visit. So we have the color codes in there. When you check in, it's this orange color. That means it's incomplete. When you've checked out, it's green. So at the end of your staff's shift, all of their visits should be that green color. There is another way that you can collect this data on the mobile app, and that is through scheduling in advance, which we'll talk a little bit about today. So I'm just going to show you really quickly that same process, but what it would look like if you had scheduled it in advance. Instead of the staff initiating their own check-in, they would see what you had scheduled them to complete. They're only going to see the schedules that they're assigned to here. And when they click on it, they'll see that option to check in. So they don't have to select the service, the individual, the program. You've already scheduled that for them, and they're just checking in on what you've created. One of the benefits of scheduling in advance is this comment section will actually be required if they're checking in more than 15 minutes outside of what you scheduled. So whether they're coming in earlier or later than that scheduled time, they'll have to leave a comment for you to explain why. Same thing, that visit will turn that orange color to let them know they've successfully checked in. Once they've completed that service, they would just open that again to check out. And that would show that green color. So this is an example of what that visit will look like, what that direct user that's providing the support will have to do on their device. And this is a great training tool. So it's a way for people to be able to practice this and go through the motions without having to create any fake data in your account. All right, so I'm going to switch over to getting signed in. And I'm using a demo account. This is a new piece of your setup that is being added. So if you've already done your setup, we'll be circling back with you to get this added in your account. This is that security privacy agreement from the state of Kentucky. So this will show up each time your user logs in, and they're going to have an agree or a disagree. If they disagree, it just signs them out. So you do have to agree to this to be able to move forward with your work. So I'm going to click agree this time. And I say yes. And then it allows me to go into my screen. So that will be part of your setup, and that will be required for all your users. So again, if you have already done the initial setup with us, we will be circling back with you to get that added in your account. All right, so I'm in a demo account. One other way that you have to check in is to use the browser. So if your staff are working in an area where there's a computer in the home, or maybe they're bringing their laptop and they have their own Wi-Fi, or they're connecting to the internet somehow, they can actually check in and out from the computer if that's an option that they need to use. I would recommend the mobile app as the easiest and fastest way. It's also the most accurate way to collect your data. But this option here for the browser would be over on the right-hand side of your screen under schedule. I'm going to click on that view check-in. Again, you would see only what's scheduled for you. So here's something that I'm scheduled to do, and I could double click on that to open it and see when this was supposed to be, which individual, which service. And then down here at the bottom, I have a check-in button. Because this was scheduled in advance, and pull up my location here. It was scheduled in advance. It was scheduled to start at 12. I'm in Central Time, and I'm having to leave a comment here because I'm outside of my 15-minute window. So again, if you take the time to build your schedules and put them in advance, there are some benefits of that, in that you can force these comments if your staff are checking in outside of the time that you scheduled it. And they can still check in. It's just going to require that comment. So maybe we were unable to check in at first arrival. Arrived at 12:10. Now that I've left the comment, it's going to allow me to proceed with my check-in. Again, it's pulling up that location. When you're using the browser, the location is even less accurate. So the mobile app is going to give you more accurate location data. I have completed that check-in. It's a really small visit because it's only 15 minutes. So that's why it's so small on the schedule. And it's this orange color. So up at the top, I can see that's that incomplete color. It also has this red outline around it because I checked in, but I checked in at 12:24. I was scheduled to check in at 12. So it's going to give me that border as an indication that something's different. There's a variance here. You could also do that self check-in from the web browser. So it's going to get your location. We're going to choose our person, our program, our service. And then if I needed to leave a comment, I can. Otherwise, I can just check in. The self check-in is not going to require that comment because nothing's scheduled ahead of time. Nothing's checking against it. So that's a quick review of how you can have your staff collect the data. What I'm going to move into now is looking at how to review the data. So once you do get staff checking in, which you want to try to do that as soon as possible, the more time they have to get comfortable with it, the easier the transition is going to be. We know, especially this is around the end of the year, there's lots of holidays, people are taking off. So, use those simulators to get people exposed to this first. And then once you're ready to have them log in, go ahead and start collecting some data so that you can see how it's going and work through any of those issues. All right, so I'm going to go to my agency tab. I'm a schedule admin, so I have this agency tab. Depending on the role that you have, you may also see the individual tab where you can find your schedule. So either place is fine. And we're going to use this create edit to open our calendar. This is showing me the program. So if you have a lot of different programs, you could choose the specific one that you want to work in. You may just have one program here, and that's okay as well. So I'm going to click next. This is showing me the individuals that are enrolled in that program that I selected. And you'll notice over here, it says status available. So if there are multiple people that get into the schedule, you would want to just select the people you need to work with. Because if you come in here and select all, it's going to lock all of these individuals. So if another scheduler comes in, it's going to say Stephanie has this locked. So you could just come in and choose the one person that you need to work on, or multiple people that you need to work on, and click next. This takes us to choose our staff. What I like to do is just click skip, and then it'll give me access to all the staff. So similar view. What's different about where we are now is I can actually go in and create schedules from here, and I can come in and edit schedules from here. I also have this different view option up here, and I'm going to click on the month. This is how I typically like to look at the data. It lets me know sort of how are we doing overall. You're going to see lots of colors on this screen. What we really want to see are green visits. Those are completed. There is a check-in and a check-out. That is data that we could then bill from. If you have these orange incomplete visits, I can just hover over this to see a little bit more information, or I could double click to open and view the full form. So this was supposed to happen on November 1st, private duty nursing. I can see where Avery checked in, but there's no checkout. So you have a couple options. You could get in touch with Avery and say, I need you to go back on your mobile app and leave a comment to tell me what your out time was for this day. You're missing your out time. She can't check out on it now. It's been too long, but she could go back in and just leave a general comment, and then you would be able to see it from here. And then you could go in and make that edit, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. These blue visits are things that you scheduled ahead of time. So you did go ahead and plan this in advance, but no one ever checked in for it. So this is, again, a time when you may need to come in and do a manual entry to show that this person did work. They just forgot to check in and out. Again, you've got these visits that have a red outline around them. Those are just an indication to you. Nothing is necessarily wrong. It means that the time that you scheduled in advance that you put here is different. It's more than 15 minutes different than what was actually done. So this may be something that there's comments and you need to edit because they were unable to check in, or there was an emergency when they arrived and they couldn't check in on time. You could use this action edit section here to go in and modify this data. But it may not be wrong. It may just be that you scheduled it for 2 to 3, but then the family or the individual called and talked to the staff and said, I need you to come at 4 instead. So it's not necessarily something you have to fix, but it's something you would want to take a look at. I am going to go ahead and create a visit for you to show you what that would look like. If you wanted to create a visit ahead of time, there are reasons why you might do that. In addition to being able to require those comments, you can also have your staff set up to get notifications. So I was scheduled to start a visit at 12, and you can see here I got a reminder. I just had it sent to my SCOM, but you could have this texted to yourself, to remind you of your visits, or you could have it emailed to you. And it's just telling you, it doesn't have any information about the individual. It doesn't show the name in your message itself. You would have to come into TheraApp to actually see the visit, but it's just telling you, hey, you've got a visit you're scheduled for that's starting at 12. So that you get this message 15 minutes before your scheduled start time. And then you can do the same thing for checkout. A lot of times people forget to check out. So if you've scheduled them to check out at 12:15 and it's 12:30, you're going to get a message saying, hey, you were supposed to check out. So that's one of the benefits of scheduling in advance. Another reason that you might schedule in advance is so that staff can use alternate methods of check-in. So we showed how to do the mobile app and the browser, but you may have people in situations where they don't have internet access. So you have the IVR or the offline option. Those both require you to schedule visits ahead of time so that the person can have that data available to them to enter when they check in. So if you know you're going to be working in areas where there's not going to be internet or cell service, that's something that you need to consider as part of your implementation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how we would create a schedule in advance. I'm going to schedule something for later today for Angie. So I'm going to come over here to my 6 o'clock. These are all the hours of the day. This starts at midnight, go into 11:59 p.m. So I could find the person and then find that time period and just double click to open a schedule. It's going to default to a time here, but I could come in and manually change this. I always recommend that you click on the clock here because it can be a little frustrating if you're trying to use these arrows to change it or type it in. So we're going to say when this visit needs to happen. It's for Angie, choosing my program, and then I'm only going to see the services that Angie is authorized for. So which service is she receiving and which staff is going to provide that service. When I'm scheduling in advance, I can also see over here to the right of the person's name and title, it's showing me how many hours this person is already scheduled for the day and the week. So if you do have someone that you're having to schedule in advance and they have limited hours, this kind of helps you keep an eye on what they're already scheduled for. All right, so this top section we have to enter. The bottom section is optional. If you want to provide more information, maybe they're not going to the person's residential address, you could put in that location where they need to meet, or maybe they're dropping them off at a different location than where they start their service. If you're using the phone IVR option to call in, you would want to choose the number that's associated with that individual on their demographic form to say this is the number that the staff should be calling in from. You could also leave a note. So maybe it's time to do the safety assessment. You need to remember to do that on your shift today. You could leave a note for that person to see as they're checking in. So I'm going to click approve, which is going to put this on the schedule in that blue color. That means the staff that's assigned, Alyssa, will see this on her calendar and she can touch it to check in and check out. Another benefit of scheduling in advance is you could copy this forward. So if this occupational therapy service for Angie happens every Wednesday or every day, you do have an option up here to copy that and move it forward. So if you're thinking about scheduling in advance, let us know when we're doing those one-on-one trainings so that we can really get into the details to show you how to best utilize this copy, this bulk copy action. All right, another reason why you might come into this screen in addition to just reviewing your data is to make edits to that data. So remember I was telling you these incomplete visits are not going to be available for billing. They're also not going to be available for the state to see as part of your EVV data because it's incomplete. So the visit needs to be completed in order for that to be considered true EVV data. So a situation happens where staff's unable to check in. There will be times where you have to go in and manually edit that information. You want to try to minimize those. So again, getting staff comfortable using that check-in and check-out is going to make your life a lot easier in terms of managing this data. But I'm just going to show you how we can make those edits. So I double clicked on that visit to open it up. And when I scroll down, this is that actual check-in and check-out data. So I can see I have data for check-in, but I don't have anything for check-out. So in this table, over here on the right, you'll see action edit. This is what you would click to make changes to this data that you're looking at. So when I click here to edit, it's going to show me the information that's already collected. And then I can come in and manually enter that checkout time. So I need to remember which day it's for. And then I'm going to use my clock, except I didn't pay attention to the time. Okay, 8:50. I'm going to use my clock to go back. Maybe I'm referencing that service note that the person collected to show what they did on their visit to actually put in what time this visit ended. It is also going to require you to enter the location. So since they didn't check out in real time, it didn't pull that geolocation data. You have a drop down here. This is coming from the demographic information, that form that you do for your intake for individuals. So you can edit that if this information is incorrect. If you don't have anything there at all, you can manually type in your options. And then the last piece here is the exception code. So this is the reason why you're making your edit. You're explaining to the state, this data is meant to be captured in real time. We had to make an edit to it, and this is the reason why. So you would use your best judgment to come through. Maybe the staff forgot to check in and out. Maybe they were having a mobile device issue. Maybe that it was just an error that the staff made. You can use your best judgment. When you choose that, you can add more details in here. So maybe we did some retraining. And I'm going to say update. When I click that, I'm getting this attestation. I need to be reminded here that whatever I'm putting on this screen is going to be used to confirm that the service was provided. So I'm putting this in, I can bill for this, but if I get audited, they're going to ask, where's your documentation to show me that this service was delivered? So I need to understand whatever I'm putting here also has backup documentation to support my audit. All right, so now when I look down here, that visit is manually entered. There's nothing for the checkout method because it was a manual entry. And you can actually see there's this asterisk here letting me know this has been edited. And if I wanted to see the reason it was edited, I could see the exceptions here. There's also reports that will show this information. So now that I've done that edit, I can come in and see that visit has turned green, which is completed, which I can now bill for. So we've taken a look at creating visits, editing visits. One of the other benefits of scheduling in advance that you could use, there's this pink color approved without staff. So there's a visit here. We know this individual needs to receive this nursing service on the 13th from 2 to 3, but we don't currently know who's going to work it. So we have created it and we have approved it, but it's pink because there's no staff assigned. So the helpful piece with this is your staff could actually come in and do a search. If they are being proactive, they could come in and do a search to say, I'm looking for open shifts. Maybe I have some time next week. Can I cover any other shifts? And I want to see the unassigned slots. I can see that visit. And if I wanted to, I could SCOM my supervisor to say, hey, I'd love to pick up the shift. So they can't add themselves. A supervisor or scheduler would have to actually assign them, but they could see those unassigned slots. You can also send it to them in an SCOM, which is again, just that like internal email inside of your TheraP account. Okay. One other thing, if you are using that IVR, which is the telephone call-in option, or the offline, which is the ability to check in without cell service, without any sort of internet connection, it stores that check-in on data on your phone. And then when you're back to internet, you can have it synced to show up in your account. So those two alternate options, that requires a printed schedule. So a staff can print their own schedule. They've got my option over here on the right. This is only going to show me my schedules. So I could come in here and see what that looks like for today. It's going to give me a PDF. So I can see the visits that I'm scheduled for today. And then I see my IVR phone number. I could also, if I have my account set up correctly, I would see my IVR user ID, what I would need to enter. So this is information that they would need to take with them to be able to dial in and put in their schedule, their IVR user ID. And then this number here with the dashes is the actual identifier for the schedule they're checking in for. A lot of times staff may not be comfortable doing that, or maybe they don't have access to a computer with a printer. You can also generate schedules for people. So if I go here to my agency tab, I'm going to print schedule under scheduling. And it's telling me I need to choose either an individual, a program, or a staff. So if I'm trying to print something specifically for Alyssa, I can type in that and put in the date range. And again, I'm going to get that PDF. So it would show that information that I could then give to Alyssa for her schedule. So either the staff can access that on their own, or you can provide it to them. So I think what we're going to switch to next is have Shawnette show you more about the reporting now that we've looked at how to manage your data, how to view your data. There are some really handy reports and tools in the system to help you see more of your quality assurance process.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. And I apologize to everyone. I typically don't share my screen just due to Wi-Fi connectivity issues. So hopefully everyone can see my dashboard though. I'm in the same demo account that Stephanie was working in. So just note that all information is fictitious regarding individuals' names and staff. But Stephanie did a great job really explaining the schedule, how to edit the schedule, create visits. And once your staff go live with EVV, at that point, you might be asking, how do we monitor our EVV data, or how do we ensure that we have all the components required for EVV? And what kind of tools does TheraP have? So I'm really happy to say that you guys have a variety of tools. We have our agency reports that you can generate to Excel. And we also have some tools housed right in the scheduling section to kind of further validate that we have everything that is required for EVV. And on the agency tab that Stephanie mentioned earlier, this is kind of the agency perspective. You might have the individual side, and there's some really nice tools right housed in here in both of these sections. The first one I want to show you is the search option. And Stephanie showed us earlier how a staff member could search for open shifts per se. I'm going to show you guys some basic tools that you guys can use as an additional quality assurance. When you're doing a search, you have the option to search by date range. You could search by individual, by program. This could be really helpful for some of you larger agencies where you have multiple programs. You might have one main hub and then you have your sister agencies. This would be a good option for you if you want to narrow down that criteria. Whether it's a slot form ID or a service auth, and remember, each individual that's receiving services has to have an active service auth with those services listed. Occasionally, you're actually going to be searching by what we refer to here at TheraP as a form ID. Whether it's a service auth or a slot, each one of them have a unique form ID. So when I show you the Excel reports in particular, that will be beneficial because you can actually search specifically for that form ID if you have it. You can search by staff. And one of the things that I really like about the search option that you will be using at some point is the status component. If you ever have to delete a visit, whether it's a pre-approved schedule in advance, maybe you have to delete it because there was an error, or you might eventually at some point have to delete a visit that has EVV data associated. If you do, no worries, TheraP is not going to lose that information. You're going to use your search option to pull that information up. And I do recommend that your scheduling admin take a look at these every so often to make sure you can see why are we deleting visits. So I definitely would recommend that you come in here for that. As I mentioned earlier, each one of those slots have also a unique form ID. So if I had that information in my pretend example right here, I could search specifically for that. Stephanie showed you this unassigned slot. So your staff members, if they're looking for open shifts, they could use that. Today, I'm just going to leave a general search and just by date range. So I have lots of information. Once I'm up on the screen, first and foremost, I want to let everyone know that this is kind of a filter system. So if you want to filter it down by, your alphabetize it or what have you, or by your sites, if you had that full perspective, you could. Other things that you can do is on this page, you can change your record so you have more of a view. So if you had lots of data for that date range, down here, you can see how many pages would be accordingly. The other option, if you need to do a deep dive or analysis on that information, is you can export it to Excel. I wanted to show you a couple things. So I wanted to pull up that deleted visit. And if I don't want to scroll down trying to find it, I could also use this filter. This is helpful to use this for the individual, staff, or even the status of the visit. So in the status column is where it's going to show you those various statuses. And so I wanted to pull up the deleted. I only typed in a little bit and I can see that now. If I open this up, it's going to take me directly to that information. First thing I want to show you is there's the status right at the top telling me that information. And the other thing is here's a little eye icon. This little information icon is where that form ID is housed. So each visit has that unique identifier in here. You're going to also see in here that it has that service authorization ID. So if I need to do a deep dive on that service auth to see what services were listed, what is the date range and so forth, again, I can copy this, go to my billing tab and do a service authorization search just by this form ID, which is helpful. The other thing is an additional quality assurance tool that you have, and this is available on your reports, your scheduling reports as well, is this update history. Agencies that have multiple staff working in the schedule, at some point you might come in here and say, this information down here looks different from yesterday. So that update history is really going to tell you what changes occurred with that slot. So if I open this up, I actually can see the different team members, the date, time, and stamp when it was archived. And I can say, I want to look at that old version versus what Hurley did versus what Mia did. So I can click show difference. Anything that's in red was the prior information, and then the green is what is new. So this visit was eventually deleted, and I can see the date, time, and stamp of when that occurred. Trust me, at some point, and then the deletion reason, I can even see down here, this visit, we have no EVV data, which is great, but this was created in error, and I can see why we deleted that. So that can be helpful. Okay, so I'm going to click back on that. So that search is going to be able to provide lots of information. If I had to make any changes to my visits, looking at these, again, remember, you can open this up as long as it hasn't been deleted. I apologize, I didn't mean to pull up the same one. You would have the ability to edit that information and make corrections, whether staff forgot to check in or check out accordingly. Let's pull up a different one that wasn't deleted. So here's your start. This is the scheduled kind of information. Down here is what they actually did, or in this case, did not do. So remember, if I had to make modifications, I would click edit here. One thing I do want to mention is when we're looking at our slot information on this page, you're going to see there's two edits. One thing I want to teach you guys is this edit here is tied to the EVV data, what the staff did or didn't do, okay? This big edit is referencing the scheduled information up here. So if I need to make changes tied to information up here, just remember you're going to use the big edit. The little edit's really tied to the EVV information of what the staff did, or in this case, did not do. Okay, so that's your basic search. I'm going to head back and talk to you about some other tools. If you're using pre-scheduling, the other tool that I really like, and it will only work if you're doing pre-scheduling, is this EVV late check-in and this EVV late check-out. This is very helpful if you have a staff member in particular that might be struggling in the process, especially when you're first initiating going live with EVV. When I click the EVV late check-in, it's actually going to show me the staff, the individual, the program, and then I can even determine what time were they scheduled to start and what time did they, it will eventually show the time that they checked into. But if there was nothing listed here, I could touch base with that staff as a heads up, as a reminder, just say, hey, don't forget to check in. So this can be beneficial if, again, you guys are using the pre-scheduling. Same is true for that EVV late checkout. It will show those staff members that are late in that process, and I could give them a quick heads up as a reminder. In this example, they're, this may be current. They might still be providing service, so I'm not alarmed by that. So that's helpful. Next thing I want to talk about, which is my absolute favorite tool to use as far as doing an internal quality assurance to make sure that we have EVV data, and just a great place to look at missing components and so forth, is this schedule EVV dashboard. The difference between the schedule and EVV dashboard and the agency reports, which I'll show you in just a minute, is the scheduling EVV dashboard provides the opportunity for me to get and write directly to that visit to make my modifications if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and generate my scheduling EVV dashboard just by clicking. And then your date range, just note, it can only be generated for 2 weeks at a time. But if you've been using the system for 2 years, no worries, you're just going to regenerate to the 2-week date range that you need. For today's evaluation, I'm just going to do the 1st through the 8th and generate my dashboard. And once this pops up, it's going to show the date range in which you had selected, your time zone. And one of the tools that I really like, especially for you larger providers, again, where you have those sister agency companies where they're also doing EVV, and you want to narrow it down to just your perspective, is we do have a filter where you could narrow it down just by your program. Okay. The other thing that I appreciate is maybe I'm doing a deep dive on just a specific service. I'm just wanting to look at one of these. You could do that. And then we also have the criteria for each one of these sections. It's listed here if you wanted to further just narrow that view down. Today, though, I'm going to leave it just as is, but just note there that filters can be very helpful, especially for your larger agencies. On your schedule and EVV dashboard, it's interactive and there's a lot of information that we can take a look at. You'll notice in each section that there is an Excel option that you can download to do further data analysis if you so choose or need to. But I'm going to talk to you about some of these components. Some of it we'll talk about during our initial training, but I'm going to talk to you about some of my favorite components in here. First and foremost, all of your visits will be defaulted to yes for billable. I actually changed this intentionally just to show you if you need to change it back, how you can do so. Again, any of these sections I can click to open up to get right directly to that visit. So for today, I want to show you guys the billable component. I just clicked no, and then I'm going to be directed right to my slot list. I'm going to click to open this up. It's going to give me a nice view of that slot information. And so we can see that's slot information up here. And if there was EVV data, looking at this page, if I needed to change this billable, this top information to no, I'm going to, in order to get to the slot, I actually need to click edit. And then it's going to take me to the page where you guys are most familiar with, which is the basic slot. So, and I apologize, my Wi-Fi is slowing down a little bit. This is why I don't have my camera on. So at the very top, again, this is an approved visit. If I come down here, I can see there's my little edit regarding EVV. Because this is this top section regarding billable, if I needed to change that from no to yes, I'm going to click the big edit to open this up. And then I'm going to scroll down to that billable section, mark that yes. And because there's no EVV data associated, it's just a pre-approved schedule. It's not going to require me to put in an exception code. If there's no EVV data associated, I don't have to worry about that information. Now, one thing I want to show you guys, if you're using your dashboard to kind of make corrections and kind of like a to-do list, the one thing that I appreciate is as I'm making my corrections, I can click my refresh and then it's going to refresh to show me that new information. And I apologize, it's just because of my Wi-Fi slowing down. Other things that I appreciate on the dashboard is you're going to be able to see, now you can see they're all yeses, as you can see how your staff are doing their check-in. As Stephanie mentioned earlier, the preferred method and the most accurate method for capturing EVV is via mobile. So hopefully we see most of these. Whenever you're seeing manual, that means the staff forgot to check in. And so we had to do a manual entry to create that. So if you need to review that information again, you can click actually right back into the visit to look at that slot information and see it. In this example, we can see that this is a manual entry. Whenever this field is missing, your check-in and check-out, you know right away that's a manual entry too. Again, as Stephanie showed you earlier, you can also look at your exceptions to see what exception was used, because remember, anytime you're editing EVV data, it will require that exception code. Okay. So again, very helpful. I can make changes and modifications directly from here, click my refresh and continue working. So manual entries, we want to keep those down to a minimum because that's, we're doing the work. We're not technically meeting the Cures Act if we are doing that for our staff, but occasionally we'll have to. Check-in distance variance is also important. The expectation for your clinicians and therapists is that they are doing their check-in directly at that individual's home. So this will be a good tool to show you that distance variance. And it's doing the distance variance from the residential address or the start location if you put that in when you created the schedule. So if I need to kind of do a deep dive to look into where is this staff member checking in from, I can scroll down and kind of look at that. So I'm going to be honest, this is in Oregon. That's definitely a little bit of ways from Kentucky. But if I need to actually, let's pretend it was in Kentucky, I can use the map view or the satellite to really hone in and figure out where they're actually doing their check-in and check-out from. And then I would touch base with that staff and say, first and foremost, you should not be in Oregon to do your check-in and check-out. Other things, if you're intentionally doing that pre-approved scheduling that Stephanie showed us earlier, and you need to make sure that those staff members are checking in on time, this will be helpful for you guys. Remember, you have various options. You can use that self check-in, which does not require pre-approved scheduling, or if you're already doing scheduling, it makes sense because you do have these additional quality assurance tools that we're showing you. But if I need to see which team members are checking outside that time frame, I can click on my list, pull one of these visits up, and see what actually occurred. And so again, this 12 to 12:15, and I apologize, this is my Wi-Fi just slowing down. And you can see that they checked in at 12:24. And you can see that there's a nice comment. When your clinicians or your therapists are checking in and checking out, during that time frame when they're doing or initiating that process, they can add this comment. And these comments, check-in comment or check-out comment, can also be beneficial for the scheduler if they have to update their times. So definitely pay attention to those comment sections, because that can be helpful for the scheduling team members to ensure that we're getting the correct information on there. So again, we have the checkouts, kind of the same information that I showed you earlier. The state of Kentucky at this time is not collecting ISP data, so we don't have to worry about that. If you're trying to monitor and maintain how many visits are actually being edited at our agency, this is also a really good tool. Remember, the no means that's a completed visit where we didn't have to go touch that visit and add an exception code. We're hoping to see more no's than yeses. Yeses is telling us that we did have to go in and touch that EVV data and we had to edit. And so there's an edit now attached with an exception code. This is nice to see what common exception codes you're using for that date range. Most common one we typically see is staff forgot to check in and check out. Again, if I needed to verify this other, I can open that and see why we selected that other and read that information. Expired service auth, very helpful to see, because remember, we have to have an active current service auth with the correct services added for each individual. So if it had expired, your staff would not be able to collect EVV. So that's an important component to pay attention to. If you so choose to use Therap's billing for your EVV services, that's part of the state contract, you would be able to see which, yes or no, if those visits have yet been generated for billing. Inactive service authorization means that someone came in and discontinued that service auth, which again would not be ideal, but it would list their names and then I could go proceed accordingly. Under the individual section, it's going to show you the individual's names and how many visits are associated with them, which can be helpful. There's individual overlap, individual service overlap, multiple services, which in Kentucky is allowed, overnight slot and service authorization time zone. One of the tools that I will recommend that you guys use is if you're not accessing the calendar grid directly to monitor those visits by the color coding, you can also come in here and look at those statuses. Remember, approved means they were created in advance, they were approved, but they should have EVV data associated with that. And so by looking at this date range over here, anything past today, so today's the 8th, if I'm looking at the 1st and this is also the 1st, we should technically find out what's going on with these visits and edit accordingly if we needed to. Okay. Other things that so again, I could work on my approved list. I might want to take a look at the one that's approved without staff and see, do we, we need to still find out, find a team member to work that shift. We have completed visits. Even though this says completed, a lot of times I'll still recommend that you take a peek just to make sure that your staff members didn't put in a check-in comment or a check-out comment regarding their timeframes. Incomplete, again, is that orange is yellow, letting you know that the staff were successful in their check-in, but they did not check out. So I definitely would want to take a look at these two and monitor and find out from the staff members what happened and then edit that EVV data. One of the key things that I want to stress today, if you don't look at anything on your EVV dashboard, is your service section and your service duration. And the reason being is anytime in the service section, it's going to show you the services that were provided. But when you see this NA, that's going to let your team members know that there was no service attached for that visit. So I'm going to pull up this one just because I know exactly what happened with this. And again, I apologize for the slow Wi-Fi. Once this opens up, I'm going to be able to see that slot information, and that slot information is going to show me the service. And so here's that scheduled information. This is pre-scheduling 1 to 2. We have the individual. It's an individual schedule. We have the individual selected. We have the program, but notice how the service is missing. I want to make sure that everybody understands if there's no service, there's no EVV. And this visit, even though it was completed, you can see my scheduling team member manually created this because there's no check-in collection method. But if there's no service, it's not going to go over to the state, to the therapy aggregator for the state to see. And you're not going to get paid for a visit because it's missing that service. So what I will need to do, this is just the slot view page, just to look at this. I'm going to click the big edit at the bottom just to get to that initial page that we're used to seeing. And in order to get that service added, I'm going to come down to the bottom and click edit. Let me tell you some reasons though why this occurs. Most often, if there's a service blank, there's a couple things. The staff may have just simply forgot to add it, which I'll show you in just a second. The other thing is if there's no service, that service authorization may have expired. And instead of looking to verify if there was an active service auth, the team member just went ahead and proceeded. Your clinicians, this was a pre-approved schedule, will still be able to check in and check out, even if there's no service, if it's pre-approved. So don't bypass this section when you're creating the schedule. No service, no EV. So that's an important key to note. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom, and I'm not going to edit the EVV data. What I need to edit is the big edit for that scheduled slot information at the top. So once I click edit, in this example, if I go down to the service, this was a simple mistake. The staff member just simply forgot to add it. If this is blank, go do a service authorization search and verify that, if that service authorization expired. Another thing that I've seen is when I'm doing pre-scheduling, I get to the program, the service, and I get to the staff, and then the service goes away. In that instance, it may mean that Ada does not have that service assigned to her. So just remember, as best practice, if the service is blank, go determine why. It's either the service auth or you didn't assign that staff their services. Okay. And then I would click save. And when I try to click save, notice there it's going to say, nice try, Shawnette. You do need to add that exception code. And in this example, I would use other, and I would say admin error. We forgot to add, we forgot to add the service. So now I'm going to assign to that information. That description information, by the way, is very helpful in the event that you get audited. So you definitely want to be mindful of that. Now I can go back to my dashboard. I made the appropriate change, and when I refresh that, I'm not going to have an NA in this section. I'll have one because there's still one in there, but we won't have two in there. So again, very, very helpful. Now you see that list drop down to 1. Service duration is another one that I want to make sure that we focus on. If you see 0 to 15 minutes, it may be a staff error. It may mean that you have a new clinician that's nervous. And why I say that is because we've been talking about the Federal Cures Act. We've been talking about it's a federal guideline. It's a federal requirement. It's also a state requirement. And sometimes when we're training new staff, they get nervous. And so they'll get to the home, they'll check in at the start of the service. And, within a few minutes, they're like, I'm so afraid I'm going to forget. I'm just going to go ahead and check out right now. And in those instances, we just need to provide additional training to let them know, really great job in doing your due diligence, but we need to capture the start time and the end time. But in this example is for a different reason. I want to show you another scenario. So I still see it 0 to 15 minutes. When I open this up, I'm going to look at my slot view just to review what occurred. By the way, there's that, whenever you see a minute like this, that's a good indicator that it was a self check-in. So down here, I can see that she checked in at 2:34. She checked out at 2:35. Remember, I mentioned earlier the importance of reading those check-in comments and check-out comments. In this example, she's telling us she forgot to check in at 11, and she can't change her time when she checks in. So now, as a scheduling admin, based on this information, I'm going to edit that. So, and there we go. It's just taking a while to get to my edit. So I'm going to click my edit to get back to my the screen that we're used to looking at, and I'm going to edit this to reflect 11 a.m. So I'm going to click my edit, and I'm going to just go to my calendar. I don't need to worry about the date on this because it's correct. I'm going to click my clock and just switch that to 11 a.m. Remember, because I'm adding or modifying this EVV data that was collected, I will be required to add that exception code. And there isn't a one that staff just forgot to check in on time. So I'm going to use that generalized one that says staff forgot to check in and check out. Again, I would probably add my description based on what she shared with me. I'm going to click update, and now this visit is all set and ready to go. We want to make sure that even though they're completed visits, that we're referencing those check-in and check-out comments, which I'll show you on your reports in just a second too. And you'll notice how it's doing a pop-up window, by the way, for each time I'm making my modifications from in here. So now again, when I refresh my screen, this will be outside that it won't be within that time 0 to 15 minutes for service time. So now I want to also maybe verify these just in case. There's my services. Again, as a reminder, the two key components I look at in here is service duration and making sure that we don't have an NA for services. I would want to work on that one as well. The state of Kentucky is not requiring verification at this time. If it can be best practice, that's an option on the mobile app. But if you guys so choose to use that is a tool that you can look at. And then really what the verification is that the individual can sign on the mobile app or do a voice verification that those services are rendered. So as you can see, this is a pretty helpful tool to monitor your EVV. If I needed to do the next 2 weeks, again, I would just go back and regenerate that date range and reinitiate that process. The next piece I want to show you, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to pass it back over to Jason, is your agency reports. Now, your agency reports is Excel-based, so you're not going to be able to make modifications on your Excel report. So I'm going to teach you some minor tips and tricks for that. So your report library does need to be assigned to you on your admin tab via user privileges. And it needs, if you're going to access the entire report library, make sure that box is checked. And we'll go over this, by the way, when we do our trainings. So I'm going to go ahead and click report library and click view. And in here, there's different ways that you can search. I typically just type in the module that I'm working in this example, scheduling. So if I, oh my goodness, if I just pull in my scheduling and click search, you're going to see the various reports that you have available, which there's 11, but one of them has been discontinued. So no worries about that. So when you're looking at your various scheduling reports, you're going to see that they all have a little bit different names and so forth. Your basic slot report is going to pull in the basic information, including check-in information, checkout information, and all that good stuff. When you see, so that's your basic. I use this one quite a bit. The basic slot report with exception code and description, if it was entered, is a good report for your quality assurance. If you're trying to kind of figure out, what exception codes are we using? Do we need to provide additional training, especially when you see you're using the exception code, staff forgot to check in and check out, and it's a consistent staff member? This would be good because it's going to tell you that exception code. Remember, the description does not go over to the state aggregator for their view, but it could be beneficial, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, for your auditing. So you want to make sure if it's something unusual, make sure to use that description box to type in what happened or occurred so that you can reference that later, especially if you get audited for billing and or the aggregator. So very helpful. Now, the difference between your basic reports and your detailed reports really is the distance variance. So in Kentucky, it is required that we're providing those services at the individual's home. This will tell you that kind of information regarding the distance of the variance from check-in and check-out. There is a nice report for deleted slots if you need to take a look again and see how many, maybe per month, how many slots are we deleting and so forth. This report is one of my favorite reports, especially for you larger agencies where you have multiple locations and you're using one therapy account, because when we're doing the staff setup, remember, we have to make sure that we mark them schedulable. We have to make sure that we, if we're going to allow self check-in, that we have that box checked. So I could drop this down to Excel and sort of table and filter it out by staff and so forth. But these are the columns that you're looking at. Was the staff marked no? And should they be marked yes? Then I would want to go to my admin tab and find the staff member and make sure to assign them their appropriate services. Again, if they're going to be, make sure the services are self-check-inable, but also did we enable self-check-in for them? You'll also notice there's self-scheduling. That's not my favorite tool, but we'll talk about that later during our trainings. And primarily it's just because it's tied, if you allow your team members to do, they can use the self-check-in, and that's my preferred method. Using the self-scheduling would allow that staff member to create their own pre-approved scheduling, but they might not understand the service authorization component. So that's why it's not my favorite component. I'm going to click back and go back to my list. So definitely reference this one, especially you larger agencies. Make sure your staff are set up correctly. There is a timesheet report, but I want to put a little disclosures. We don't connect to any type of payroll system, but you could use this to kind of look at your staff's time and so forth. Weekly staff report, if you guys are putting in, when you're doing your initial setup, the staff, how many hours, like eight hours a day and 40-hour week. This could be helpful if you're trying to determine which staff members are working overtime and so forth. But just note, if you do use those kind of components, it's really just for this tool. If you say a staff member can only work 5 hours a day, 20 hours a week, therapist is not going to stop them from working under or over that. It's just a tool for these kind of reports so you can kind of use. We also have an overlap report. We have a weekly staff report by program, which can be helpful. And this one has been discontinued. Very quickly, I wanted to show you this basic slot report and how you can utilize this. And this is by month. Pay attention to the report criteria, but I believe all of our scheduling reports are for 1 month. I'm not going to go to the 30th because I can't go in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and generate that from the 1st to the 8th. I'm going to export this to Excel and just teach you guys some real basic components that you can use this report for. And hopefully it's coming. There we go. Okay. I was going to close out a few of my browser tabs to help my Wi-Fi. So first things first, I have to enable this before I can even work on it. And you guys can do your filters however you wish. I usually just do a basic table and click OK. And then I'm going to click anywhere on my screen. And now I've got a nice table. One thing I will do today, just for your eyes, so that we can make sure we can see this, is I'm going to just change this to yellow. But what I did when I inserted my table is I've got all my filters in place. And if you have a table with lots of data, I can scroll down and still see my column headers. So it did a nice freeze pane for me. Now, remember I said each one of those visits, those slots have a unique form ID. So that's where this is housed. So if I find problems on my spreadsheet in a minute, I'm going to copy whichever one of these that I need to, come up here and copy it. And then I'm going to go do a schedule search. And remember how I showed you that form ID field? I would paste that in there. I would pull up that specific visit that you need to look at. But things that I'm looking at on my scheduling reports are things such as, by the way, you can narrow it down by individual. You can narrow it down by the service description code is one I definitely recommend because what I typically will do in this instance is filter it by blanks. I need to make sure that we have all visits with a service. This one's missing its service. That means no EV. Even if there was a complete check-in and check-out, it's not going to go to the state aggregator, and you definitely would not want to bill without a service. So again, I would copy this, go do a schedule search, and I would paste this in that form ID. I would open that up and scroll down to the bottom, click the edit, and then make sure I go add that service to this visit. Okay. No service means no EVB. So that can be very helpful. Other things that I look at on my scheduling reports, and there's quite a bit of information on here that you're going to see. There's your service auth form ID that's associated with each one of those visits. So that could be helpful, but I can filter this down by staff. But really other things that I use this for, which I want to show you guys, there's the note column. So if you put notes for your staff, that'll be listed here as well. The slot information, I don't really pay attention too much to for me personally, but things that I recommend is that you look at your check-in times. Again, how I would use this column, and this is column AA, is I would use the drop down and again, filter it by blanks, because if it's blank for a check-in time, that means staff forgot to check in, which we know is not going to go anywhere. It's just sitting there. So definitely would need to monitor these and go update these, find out from the staff what exactly occurred, or delete them. There's a lot of times where a clinician might go out to an individual's home, they're a no-show, they've changed their mind and so forth. So depending on what action is what you'll take. So that's your check-in time. The other thing I recommend on this report that you consider taking a peek at, let me go this way, is check out. The same thing. So you'll work through your check-in times, then you're going to go to your checkout. Again, filter that down by blanks. Whatever's on your list, you're going to go copy each one of those one at a time, form IDs, and then go paste them in your schedule search and make those changes that need to be made. Other things that are helpful is you can see scheduled duration versus what the staff actually worked, and then the variance between the two. That's helpful if you're doing pre-scheduling and you're trying to determine how much service time the staff should have been working. Other things that I like, check in and check out edited by the scheduler. Again, I would filter this by yes and just see overall how are our staff members doing in general. If we have to edit, it might mean that we need to do, especially if we've got exception codes such as staff are forgetting to check in and check out. The other thing I want you to really focus on is the check-in comments and check-out comments. Remember, when I see things like the staff forgot to check in at 11, I would want to go make sure that we're updating that to reflect that. And this is one we just worked on. So there was that check-in comment that we worked on earlier, and you can see that I updated that and it's now showing 11 a.m. But originally they checked in at 2:34. This report, you're going to have to learn how to just kind of read it, but it's giving you that the same information that we just saw on the dashboard. So again, feel free to use this. Let me make sure there's nothing else. Again, self check-in. and verification and so forth. Lots of good tools to use in your quality assurance. I feel like Therap does an amazing job making sure for your quality assurance, you know how to look at that data. Once you guys get connected to the aggregator, we're going to talk about additional quality assurance tools that you will have regarding the visits and their status and making sure that they're showing up in the aggregator. But in the interim, before that go live date, you have lots of resources, lots of tools. And we don't expect you to memorize all this. And if you guys need additional assistance, you can email us at that Kentucky alias support, ask us which tool you think is best. But also all of these tools are going to be referenced on that Kentucky State EVV page. On our next week's town hall, we're going to have Kelly Galloway talk to us about the billing, and I'm sure she's going to have some really amazing tools regarding those service authorizations and reports that are housed in your report library as well. But for now, I think that's a good starting point. I hope this information was helpful. I know it was a lot of information, but no worries. We're going to make sure you guys are squared away when we do those one-on-one trainings. I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
Good deal. Thank you, Shawnette and Stephanie before her. Phenomenal information, really kind of an A to Z of the Therap scheduling and EVV platform in terms of both the setup, the checking in, the checking out, and then Shawnette with a lot of the tools that are available to you guys to do quality assurance and really provide oversight to the EVV services being provided. A couple of things that Shawnette mentioned, but I really want to reiterate. We are very aware of the fact that that was a lot of information. We don't expect that all of you are now 100% experts in the Therap EVV platform, but we wanted to give you kind of a broad bird's eye view of all of the tools that were available. And a couple of things, as Shawnette mentioned, we're going to be covering that stuff with you in our calls that we do with you. We are also going to be posting this video so that you guys can access it. We also have a lot of those components that were covered by Shawnette and Stephanie in more bite-sized chunks available on our help and support site that I'm going to provide you a URL to here in just a moment. So a lot of different ways to access that information. And as always, if all else fails, you guys have the KY support at therapservices.net alias as a means of following back up with us with any questions that you may have. So again, thank you very much to both Shawnette and Stephanie for that really tremendous overview of everything that's available in there. And hopefully that was helpful to you guys. So I know we're running a little short on time, but with the little bit of time that we have left, I want to share my screen and quickly walk through a few frequently asked questions that have popped up over the course of the last couple of weeks. We wanted to get some answers out to you. I've seen some other questions come in. I've tried to answer a few of them in the chat here. Any that we don't get to, we'll try to get posted for you guys for next week as well. But hopefully everyone can see my screen here. We continue to have a lot of questions around the requirement of the Social Security number for all users, and certainly understandably so. You guys are wondering, why do we need to put this in? Well, a couple of things. Number one, after some discussions with the state, we have adjusted that requirement to only require the last four of the social, as long as you have leading zeros. As you can see here on the screen, we do require, it is a nine-digit field. So we do have to have all of those in there, but you can use leading zeros in just the last four if you choose to do so. Others have asked about why are we doing the social rather than employee ID? Part of the reason the reason that we are that we have this requirement in place is that we have to create a unique identifier for each of the users within the state of Kentucky, so that we can look at the data in the aggregator and make sure folks aren't claiming to be in two places at once, folks that may work for multiple providers, that sort of thing. So we've got to have a unique ID. And while we certainly understand that each of you all have your own employee IDs, there is no way we can verify that that is unique to each user. So we have to have a verified system for making sure it is unique. That is why the social is part of the generation of that ID. Again, having said that, we understand some of the questions that have come in from you guys, thus the willingness to move in this direction with only the final four, but that is the reason why. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear to everyone. We've also had a question come in regarding what type of multi-factor authentication will be used within Therap's EVV platform and aggregator. And in fact, we have a lot of different versions for multi-factor should you choose to utilize them. I've put a link right here in the slides, but I'll open it up just so that you guys can see. You can easily find this information on our help and support. ways to go in and set that up. I'm not going to take a ton of time going through it because it's easily accessible information to you guys to see. But point of the matter, if you choose to use 2FA for your users, you have a lot of different ways to set that up, and it's very clear instruction on how to do so. Obviously, if you have any challenges with that, our support team are more than happy to jump in there and kind of walk you through the process. In terms of the aggregator, again, remember there's the Therapy EVV platform, and then that sends data over to the aggregator, as does or as do all of the third-party vendors that some of you guys are choosing to work with. On the aggregator side, we are utilizing the state's single sign-on option, which is referred to as COG. Many of you guys may have heard this before. You probably have used it in other ways. It's certainly something that's not specific to Therap. It's part of the state of Kentucky, the Kentucky Online Gateway. But we will be using that for access to the Therap aggregator. All of you, we certainly understand that all of you guys already have a COG administrator within your organization to conduct various other types of activities with the state, and we're going to be following up with those super administrators to set up that access and link it to the Therap aggregator. You're going to be getting more information about that in the very near future, but that is how we're going to be addressing that on the aggregator side. Couple of questions that continue to come in around third-party vendors. We've had this some version of this question or these two questions up over the last several weeks, but as folks are continuing to ask, we want to make sure we're continuing to get this answer out in front of you guys. If you work with a third-party vendor and don't believe they're going to be connected to the aggregator by the go live date of 12/28/23, what should we do? Well, the first thing you need to do is to let the state know of what your expectations are, and we'll figure out the chart, how to chart a path going forward. But please utilize this Medicaid public comment at ky.gov and send in your concerns, and the state will follow up with you to address your particular situation. We also have had the question, can you tell me if my third-party vendor is already certified with Therap? Now, it is certainly true that we have worked with multiple vendors in multiple states. That being said, part of this process requires the explicit certification of each vendor here in the state of Kentucky working with you guys as providers. So we can't comment directly on whether or not we've already worked with a particular vendor. We have to work directly with them, and they all go through the certification process. So just wanted to clarify that in the event that folks continue to have questions on it. But those were the main questions that came in, some version of those. So that's why we wanted to get that up there. But if you continue to have additional questions or want to refer back to any of the questions that we've discussed on some of our previous calls, we are posting those, as you can see here. And I'll go back over to our Kentucky EVV site. You can access these questions. We've tried to categorize them as best we could so that you can get in there and refer to a lot of the questions and get some good information there from our Kentucky EVV specific support site. And again, that site is going to be the home for a lot of training resources that you have. Again, I think pretty much every one of you guys have had at least some initial contact with our support specialists doing one-on-one sessions. If you've not, you will be very soon. I know we're in the process of setting some of those up with some of you guys. And through that site, you're going to have access to ongoing recorded webinars, kind of the bite-sized chunks that I mentioned a bit earlier around some of the components that Stephanie and Shanette shared with us earlier in the call, as well as a full library of asynchronous training materials that are at your fingertips through that site at any time. We encourage you to get in there and check them out. And certainly if you can't find something in particular that you're looking for, that's what we're here for. Please reach out to us at kysupport@therapservices.net. Going forward on our upcoming town halls, what to expect, as you've heard me mention and Shanette mentioned it again, next week we're going to focus specifically on the Therap billing system. We'll do our typical updates and questions around the entire project, but in terms of our content, we are going to focus on that optional billing and claiming. So that really involves, and in my opinion, involves two groups of you guys. The first group is those of you that know you want to do billing and claiming. Please join us for that particular session. Kelly Galloway of Therap, one of our billing specialists, is going to be walking you through the administrative setup and the functionality associated with billing so that you guys can kind of see how it works in preparation for using that system. For others of you, you may not yet 100% know the answer to that question. You know you're using Therap's EVV platform, but you've got another mechanism you're already using for billing, and you're not sure if you want to transition over to Therap. this is certainly going to be useful information for you as well. So you can get more of a sense of exactly how it works, not only the process of sending the information over, but some of the reporting capabilities and other things that come along with that functionality. So we encourage you guys to join us for that session as well, so you can find a little bit more about that. But again, just so that we're clear for anybody that may be questioning, this is optional. You are absolutely not required to utilize Therapist Billing, but it's a pretty phenomenal tool that we certainly encourage you to at least take a look at, and so you can make an informed choice as to what you guys are doing. Going forward in our schedule beyond next week, I'm actually going to be talking with the state tomorrow, and we're going to start working through kind of our plans for the town halls going forward and what topics that we think will be most beneficial, and as well as our schedule both around the Thanksgiving holiday and the Christmas holiday, and what seems to make sense. We're still going to stick with Wednesdays, but we will keep you guys posted in terms of how this is going to work, but we will communicate that out as soon as the determination is made on this. But generally speaking, as you can see on our screen, we're going to stick with the same schedule of Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, but certainly we'll communicate any changes. Beyond that, that's about it. Again, we appreciate the time. I know it was a lot of information today, and we want to, again, get that information back out in front of you. We appreciate the help of the Kentucky team with these recordings, getting that information back to us. So we will get them posted on our site and shared out to you as soon as we possibly can. Before I let everyone go this afternoon, I will ask my friends from the state of Kentucky if there are any additional comments, questions, anything like that we want to add before we close out our call.
Jason, yeah, we do not have anything additional. We just thank all the providers for being here and just encourage them to take the steps they need to be taken and reach out if they have questions.
Very good. Thank you so much. And thank you again to all of you guys for attending. Again, much appreciation to Shana and Stephanie for the information they shared. We will let everybody go, and we look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thanks, everybody.